All right. Excuse me. And we're live. Thanks everyone for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is July 23rd. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which is a new time for our weekly meeting. Obviously, you know that if you're here, but for folks who don't, that's the case. We decided last week to switch to Tuesdays and alternating between 1600 and 1800 UTC time today, starting with the 1800 slot. Before we get things rolling, does anyone have any announcements or updates? Jory's not on, so I'm sure she'd have something to say if she were. If you're interested in her announcements and updates, there's an email list that you can find, and I'm going to kind of jump into the agenda items because there is number 260 is creating a page with links to Slack channels and sign up link on Slack, as well as mailing lists and other assorted items. So jumping right into the agenda, Brian, do you want to give us an update?
Wait, before the agenda, did you post a link to the Google Doc for attendance?
Yes, Michael did, but I will copy and paste it again as well. There it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I meant to do it again, but I got excited about this page that Brian put together. So, yeah, Brian, I know you're driving, so if you want, I can give context. You let me know.
Yep, I'm good for right now. So the context on that is just basically that we have a page on the openjsf.org domain, which lists out the various collaboration channels. So it includes Slack, but is not necessarily limited to Slack. The idea being that those of us who know to look for this information on GitHub in this particular repository know where we need to go, but not everybody starts there. Many of them would probably start on the actual Foundation website. So this is basically just providing pointers to the appropriate places so that we can get more people participating in the communication channels. That's it.
Yeah, I noticed, and I'm happy to see that it is also a top-level link in the menu in the OpenJS Foundation website.
Yeah, definitely, and that was intentional. We want that to be very discoverable. Essentially, no matter where you start looking for this information, you should be able to find it pretty quickly.
That's great. There's a little bit of comments in the issue, so we may flesh this out a little bit further, but it's a really great start, and I'm happy to see it here.
Cool.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything on this issue and this page?
Just to clarify the question, so it says for the repos, it would make sense to have that info in a pinned post. You mean like in the GitHub repos?
Oh,
have a pinned issue or something, or?
No, I probably fingered that. It should have been in the Slack channels to have the information where those repos are in a pinned post. So basically what I'm saying here is that for example, the standards working group, it probably makes sense to have a pinned post inside that Slack channel that has links off to appropriate repositories and things like that. What I want to avoid here is the information on the Foundation website getting stale. And I also want to avoid myself being the gatekeeper on that if there's a change that needs to be made. So I think it's maybe just a slightly easier place to put that information.
So I definitely agree the information would be good there. My only question is, like, do I then have to go and like add each of those channels to my Slack, or will those just show up? Like, how easy is it to then understand the one that I'm looking for?
I mean, when you log Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think maybe to Michael's point, it might not be bad on that page to just have a couple of like featured Slack channels that you may be interested in if you're interested in the OpenJS Foundation.
Yeah.
Or like, a one-line description. But if that's really easy, like if you basically say, okay, I've connected to Slack and I'll see the pinned things that you suggested automatically, then that may be better, right? It's how many steps would it take to get to them was my only concern.
It should be 2 clicks. So when you connect to a workspace in Slack, there's the channel list on the left. There's a plus button. And I believe, no, I'm sorry, that's where you create a channel. Joining a channel, click on channels, and you can browse to whatever public channel you want to get to.
So I think maybe the question is how do we best surface the most important channels? And I think that you can. I don't know about Slack admin too much, but sometimes I go into a channel and it suggests channels. I wonder if we can, when someone joins the org and they go to their first channel, if we can have a little copy that says, these are some of the most important channels that you may want to consider.
Yeah, I mean, when you join, you join the general channel by default. And we could always put a pinned post on there that says, here are some common channels that people like to join.
So that might be, or having the description there. It's just like, I looked at it and said, okay, now that there's these 5 different channels, which one should I pay attention to? And I could guess, but I think like a paragraph, but I don't want to have to like click on each one to see it. It's kind of like to get the summary. But your suggestion of having that in the general channel, I think is a good one.
Yeah, does anyone have experience customizing like those kind of welcome messages in Slack? And would this be possible to customize it and have these channels be suggested?
Yeah, I can do that.
I know you can also set, you can set more than just the general channel for people when they join. And they can auto join them to other channels, but.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
But, well, I don't know if you want to join everybody to every channel, right?
No, but you can be selected. Like if there's like 2 or 3 that we think people should join right out of the gate, you can set those. But yeah, you wouldn't want to set everything.
Yeah, no, setting more could make sense. My original comment was more around discoverability. That's all. Like help it, make it easy for somebody to say, oh yeah, here are the 5. I'm interested in these 2. I'll join them. And
Yeah, I've seen Slack channels where like you said, that channel selection is all mixed up. So you get like the fun random or like cat pictures channel mixed in with the absolutely critical upcoming meetings channel, and it turns into a large deluge of channels, and it's hard to figure out like which are the ones people really care about. But another, I think there might be a feature where you can modify the Slack bot, like the default Slack help bot, to give you like an intro message, like we're saying. I think it does it through a DM, or it does it, it gives you like a hidden message in the general channel that only you can see. And I think it can suggest channels there.
Yeah, I think I've seen that too.
I just did a quick Google and ended up on Greetbot, an onboarding assistant for Slack. So something like that could be interesting too. We might want to highlight admins or something. So
how about in the meantime, how about I just pin a post and then we'll see if that works. And then if there are additional features that we want, we can look into some of the alternate tools. But if the pinned post is enough with some summaries that, they can be updated as new groups spin up and grow active Slack channels. Maybe we can solve the problem kind of simply.
Yeah, I'm +1 on that because I think that's just it's simple. It's kind of equivalent to having them listed in the like the original page, but just the more effective way of doing that. And so I think I just a long way of saying +1 to your idea of like, let's keep it simple to start and then do something else if we think we need to.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
I've got the action.
Excellent. Great. So do we have this? Do we consider this issue resolved and can close it and remove the label? I guess we can wait until Brian posts that pinned message to Slack, and then we'll wrap things up there.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Great. All right, moving on. Unless anyone has anything else to add, pause for a moment. The next agenda item, my favorite agenda item, is issue number 129, review meeting times. I think that this is good to go for now. I feel like we should close this issue and remove the label, and you know, if we want to make any tweaks to the time, you know, another issue can be opened, and we can go from there.
Makes sense.
Any?
Yep.
All right,
awesome.
great. No.
Agreed.
Excellent. Great. All right, so I will go back and close that later. Another issue here, the next issue in the agenda item is issue number 124. This is the update move JSF CLA bot for new foundation. This is something that we discussed briefly last meeting as we went through our project board. And Brian was working on this. Do you have any updates, Brian, or we punt to next week?
No, not yet. It's in progress. It's just I don't have anything meaningful to update.
Yeah. I know these things take time, especially working with council and whatnot.
Indeed.
All right. Cool. We'll check back on that next week. Okay. The next agenda. Thank you. The next agenda item is the post-bootstrap work managed by the CPC, which is the lead that leads us to the project board. However, I wonder if we should jump to Jory's comment yesterday, which highlights a few issues that aren't on the agenda, but I think are worth going over. Does anyone object? Or?
Sounds good.
Great. So if you go to the agenda issue, you'll see at the bottom, Jory has a few quick updates here, and I can read them out for folks who are on the phone or what have you. And then I'll also add that she mentions that Chris Borchers, who is on the call, can also give some context or any, answer any questions perhaps. So the first item here is issue 261. And she says, there appears to be some bug or issue with GitHub preventing me from committing change to the PR. And as she mentioned, we had a similar issue on a different PR that I was trying to help her update and merge in. So the issue that she points to, issue 261, is add entry point for projects wanting to join on README and review project progression. I don't know if there's really, I guess, anything to talk about here, other than to just highlight the fact that there's this issue. And did she say that she had created a PR for that? Do you know, Michael, since this is an issue you created?
I don't know off the top of my head. I could look.
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't see anything.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know of anything else other than that. No.
Okay. All right, so I guess we'll just kind of highlight that that perhaps she's blocked on wanting to do this bit here, but that we will, you know, add an entry point for projects wanting to join on the README. The next item she has here in her comment is issue 262. Have created an the issue she's referencing is create issue template and new board to track applications to join the foundation. She's created a project onboarding issue template and met with Chris and Chris Borchers and Chris Hiller to start filling out this out for Architect and Mocha, perhaps the reps for each of those projects. There's a new project board, and she's triaged some stuff into it. So I will open up issue 262 here. Michael created this last week from our discussions. There is the template file, which looks like it was already merged in 4 days ago. So this is, if you click through to it, it's a GitHub issue template, which has a checklist of the expectations that a new project should be meeting, or at least the bare minimum for now. And then additional to that is the project board. So Chris Borchers, do you want to comment at all on these items here?
I mean, I don't know if there's anything anyone's specifically curious about. I know I'm in the process of working through the issue for architect. Yeah, and I mean, it's some things are done, some things are blocked, and I think going back to her comment, yeah. So in her next bullet in her comment, she mentions the different things that are kind of blocking. I believe Chris and I on completing these.
The only one I wondered about on that one was the last one, which was the COC escalation path, because I think we have that defined in terms of the external view. We don't necessarily have the internal view. Like once somebody reports something to the address, we still need to figure out and document what we're going to do. But I don't know that the projects need that to start adopting the COC and integrating with what we've said externally.
I would mostly agree, except for if something happens and something needs to be escalated and we don't have the process.
So I can give a very, very fresh update 1 minute ago, and Manil pinged me on Twitter to highlight this. He PR'd the process for handling reports based on the document that he was fleshing out with the group here in this issue. So hopefully, regardless of whether it's blocking or not per se, this should be able to be landed pretty soon.
Okay. And then, yeah, there was a few other items around the charter template. I believe I'm trying to find the.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the issue.
whether Brian, I think, would offer to create one.
Create a project charter template.
Yeah, I think there was some mention. I think back in a previous meeting, there was just I think perhaps Brian, you were going to supply some other LF project charters.
Yeah. So what we discussed previously was putting together a starter charter, and I think maybe I did have that action. I do apologize. I forgot about it. You reminded me just now. I can definitely get on that. I think, in terms of order of operations, we can get started on that now. It's something that we'll need to maybe, we might want to get, for some of these things, review possibly from legal, just to make sure that we have everything correct. But I think we can get started on that now, and I'll take that as an action. And thanks for reminding me.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think in 207, Jory commented just a few days ago. I mean, I think there was some conversations around perhaps just starting from a simplified version of Node's charter as well.
Well, I think it was that either there was some confusion over whether like Brian or Mike Dolan had volunteered to doing a template, or if that wasn't the case, then she would just create a template based on the Node charter.
Right.
But I think it's the key thing is to clarify, maybe in answering that one, to say, yeah, okay, Brian's going to create a template. We can start from that, or no, maybe create one from the Node charter. But it sounded like Brian was volunteering to do that. So.
Yep. I can do that.
Great. So maybe I'll assign this issue to you, Brian, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Nope, go for it. That helps me track it.
And I'll add the agenda label as well. All right. Great. Anything else to add, Chris Borchers or Chris Hiller?
I don't think much else for me. I think for the most part, the issue template seems to be working. Jory and I went through it, and made some edits before she finalized it. It seems either everything we want is covered, or we have those couple of outstanding things that are already tracked in issues. So, and unless anybody has other questions, or if Chris Hiller, if you have anything to add, feel free.
I'm good.
Great. Well, thank you both, all of you. And just to kind of add some context here for folks who are following along, it's great that Architects and MOCA, two projects that are already in the foundation, are helping us dog through this process. So thank you. So I believe that covers Jory's comments here and the many issues he references. If anyone has anything more to add, please let me know. Otherwise, we will move on. And I'm just quickly jumping over to the project onboarding board. It looks like the things that we talked about are all kind of captured here, so I don't think we necessarily need to dive into that at all. So I will jump over to the post-bootstrap housekeeping board. I'll drop a link in the chat.
Oh, actually, sorry, can I jump in? I was just looking at the board as well and saw one of the blocked issues. Brian, do you have any update on, here, I'll get the link too. It's number 258, the license and copyright guidance. I believe we were waiting on legal.
Yep. Yeah. So I do have an update on that. So we got we have the text back. I'm just actually about to send this out to the member legal committee list. So we should hopefully have this reasonably soon. Right now, what I have are the raw documents, and what I want to do with them, once we've gotten agreement from everybody that the raw documents are what they should be, turn them into plain language that we can then, put on the put out as guidance for projects. So yeah, so this is another one where the update is that it's in progress. There's forward motion. We're not quite at a point where it's makes sense to give a comprehensive update, but it's coming.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for bringing that up, Chris. I just promoted Manil into the group here as a panelist. And so maybe if we double back, I just posted a link to the pull request into the chat here. This is pull request number 271. This is adding the process for handling reports, the COC. I'll let Manil give us any more context or any more details here. But I know one thing that he and I briefly talked about yesterday or sometime recently was whether this needs to be like any sort of proposal process, or if we should just be PRing this directly into the project.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, that was one thing that seemed unclear. The reason this document was created was because a need was stated pretty early on. So this addresses actually an existing issue. The document so far covers the channels through which we might get reports. It also covers confidentiality and record keeping. There is a section on escalation and steps that will probably need some discussion to see if that works across all the projects who have a say in this. There's a short section on roles, especially the part that needs discussion in the section on roles are whether moderation team representatives from each project in the CPC would want to be part of any group that deals with reports to OpenJS. And there are a couple of extra questions that we have not addressed yet that's in a section near the end. And the final section is what we might look forward to that we can incorporate into our process. There are two possible projects that are in flight that are not exactly related. They're quite tangential. to OpenJS, but we would be able to bring in some of their findings and some of their process once they put some material out there. That's my description.
One comment from looking at it, like we have this already landed here. I'm just going to paste it into the chat as well. I'm like, and it talks about a code of conduct panel. So I think, like, I don't see that covered in the current version of the doc, right? So I think either it needs to like mention how we're populating the code of conduct panel, or we need to update, like they need to be in sync, is I guess all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Michael. This definitely needs to be integrated. I think, so for the code of conduct, it seems like that is, well, if we think of the code of conduct as the rules that we are following, then the report handling process is the process by which we enforce those rules. Yes?
Exactly. So that, yeah, so I was kind of thinking is the second doc should be, here's how we're implementing what we've said is the external view of it.
I see.
Right, like once we receive something on COC escalation at, and I see that we have to do a PR to update to to have the right, foundation org. But then it's like when something comes into that, what gets kicked off, right?
Yes, that's right. Does that also mean that escalation, the section on escalation inside the code of conduct requirements might actually live in what gets kicked off in the document, so in the handling document?
I think the separation I would see is the foundation code of conduct, like that's the conduct requirements. Like that one I could see being like, here's how it explains how it works to somebody outside. And then the other one would be like, okay, and here's how we're going to handle things that are reported through that external view. That's just my thought of a possible separation. Now we can actually like, that was in the proposal, so it could actually be rearranged into whatever makes the most sense for communicating the different bits, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we have this.
Back,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and this kind of brings back the question too, whether this should be a part of a proposal, which obviously it's already in process here. So should it just be folded into this and perhaps reorged a little bit?
Yeah, what stage? Yeah, so, well, that's true. It could be that, like, it could be an extension to that proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Other than we've already, like, our code of conduct in the CPC refers to this. So,
but it is only stage one.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Okay.
Like extending that proposal to have the additional information, like how do we, okay, who's on the other end of that COC escalation and stuff would make sense.
Yeah. So maybe this PR should be against this proposal, and we can kind of expand upon it throughout this proposal process.
I'm +1 for that. As I understand it, the idea now is to PR the handling document actually into the stage 1 proposal for the code of conduct.
That's what I understand too.
Yeah, and I think this is good too, because then like the questions that you have there aren't like merged into, to the repo. It's still a part of it's appropriate to have further questions that we're working through as we're going through this proposal process.
Yeah, there's even a section for that, I think, in one of the files. Like there's the README, and there's actually required resources to be responsible. Often I think we've just added in there, what's necessary to complete this proposal. We've often added in like questions and things that still need to be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I can extract unanswered questions from the handling document and put this here if this would become part of the same process.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We capture all of this into one kind of lump proposal and figure it all out together.
Michael, you're listed as the champion for this particular proposal. Would you be okay with what we've discussed so far?
Absolutely.
Cool. Then I can take the action to implement whatever we've discussed, bring that into this and extract whatever relevant sections there are into the README and tie them together.
Excellent. Thank you, Manil.
Totally. Would there be any other questions around this document? Cool.
Nope. All right, great. Excellent. So moving on, the last agenda item is basically to go over the post-bootstrap housekeeping project board, which I will post again in the into the chat. And we've been making great progress on this board recently, having been going through it. So I will just go through the list of things, starting with the in progress column here. The first item is issue 172. This is new process for CPC reps to share responsibility of travel fund. This was assigned to Jonah. Any progress on that?
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
there is a pull request set up for the stage 0 proposal for moving the current Node.js and ComCom travel fund into the OpenJS Oregon charter. So I'm on mobile right now, so if someone else could post that PR into the chat for me, that'd be great. But it should be referenced in the issue at this point.
I see it here.
Yeah, so I put it up a couple days ago. There's already been some small amount of comment, just changing, answering some of the questions, clarifying some of the language and what the intention is. One of the issues is basically because people are very sensitive as to how the current TSC and ComCom members might have opinions or react to this. Definitely we want to garner like as much feedback as we can early in the process. So I think I've been asking if I should @mention specific people, and it looks like the recommendation is to @mention both of those teams, which in GitHub you can only do from inside that org. So I was thinking of creating an issue in the admin repo that talks about the travel fund and mentioning those teams and adding a link to this proposal. And my question for today's meeting would be, do you think it would be better to do that after it's reached stage 0 and make that the requirement for stage 1? Or do we want to get that feedback right from the get-go from stage 0 here to just show like how proactive we're trying to be in getting that feedback? But I also don't know if we want to mix in those conversations with the rest of the proposal feedback, or say like, this is the initial proposal, now we're going to work on the next stage, and that's when we'd like to get that opinion.
I think that's a very good question. To me, it feels like we could wait until stage 0 and then ping the admin, an admin issue, and then perhaps folks from the different, the ComCom and the TSC, the two groups that we want to make sure this is clearly surfaced to, can mention it in their upcoming meetings as an additional kind of ping.
Cool. Anyone else have any opinions, or should we go with that? In which case, I can add that that's our approach to the current thread in that PR. And then my question is, when should we? What would be the next step to getting this landed as stage 0?
I think just working through the questions that are open and getting the required approvals should be enough to land at stage 0. Does that seem accurate to others?
Oh, what are those required approvals?
Just like any other PR. Opening up the details there. Also, Michael, do you have anything to add, Michael Dawson?
Yeah, no, I've been thinking like it definitely needs to get buy-in from, or like we need to raise awareness in the TSC and ComCom before it moves to stage 3. I was just thinking what my preference would be in terms of, now versus later. I don't object to like moving to stage 0 and then doing notification, but I also don't know, it's not so complicated or so long that, that it would hurt that much if we actually just did the FYI now as well.
That's kind of my thought too. Yeah, yeah.
Like, sometimes I can see there's some value in terms of, the CPC working through the issue and clarifying things and all that, but I just don't know that there's going to be enough of that it's then to prevent us from just saying, yeah, let's not mention the TSC and ComCom now, and often earlier is better than later, right?
That's why, yeah.
Yeah, my only thinking was get some of these basic details kind of fleshed out, and then almost have it be something of proposal's not a great word, but at least like it's a little more clear for people just coming at it and looking at it rather than having to parse through what state it's in and what questions are open and things like that.
How about after we get the next couple questions all settled and there's no activity for a couple days, I can rebase all of the commits and revisions into a single commit and then send that up as a new PR, basically closing the current one, opening the new one with basically the same starting comments and the same, from the same branch, but then we can start a fresh conversation.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I'd be like, if we're going to do that, maybe we should just land it as stage 0 and then open the PR to move it to stage 1.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just comment on your previous question. To me, this seems like just a general pull request, and it's not clear in terms of the proposal process, but the requirements, the conditions for that are no outstanding objections, 2 approvals by CPC members, and the PR has been open for at least 72 hours.
Okay,
that is a good point that we should probably clarify that, if we want to leave that as our, for all stages, but for not to say we should do anything different. I think for stage 0, that's perfectly fine. I just wonder if like for stage 3, we should have somewhere it's like, well, no, if it needs board review, then, or more CP, anyway, that's a separate issue though, so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good question. The proposal process does not seem to clarify, those sorts of, if the conditions are different than our regular PR merging process.
Right. So the assumption is they're not, but it is an interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the assumption too is like, if it is something that requires board approval, then, then we follow that process.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is when we get to that, that stage. So, all right, cool. So then the plan for this then is to work through the questions, secure some approvals, and it's been open for a little bit. And once it's 72 hours, we can merge it in and go from there. Alert the TSC and ComCom, and I'll be sure to bring it to our next meeting as well.
Yeah, and I think and just another suggestion, when you open the issue, maybe just include a link to the staging process in case any of the TSC members aren't aware of the different stages and whatever.
Great idea.
That's a good idea. Yep. Excellent. All right, we're at 15 minutes left. Does anybody have anything else to share or discuss on that issue, or shall I move on? Great. So the next two issues in here we've already discussed, the JSF CLA bot and the create the page for the links to Slack channels and whatnot. So, and then let's see, the next one is create issue templates and new board for track applications to join the foundation, which we've discussed. Somebody please stop me if I'm moving on and they want to touch on any of these. The next
I just
one,
wonder, can that one be closed?
oh, yeah, actually it is, the issue template one. That can be closed, right?
I guess, should we wait?
Oh,
Just as we're still dogfooding the process, if the template needs to change.
yeah, and Jory does have a comment in this issue, you know, that we're perhaps still working through with template files and such.
Okay, I was just, yeah. If we think it's good to leave it open as a place to discuss issues, then sure. Just we should think about when we basically, if we have a template and we're going to keep changing it at some point, we can, you know, we don't need an issue to track that.
That's true too. I mean, it is the create issue. So if we have reasons to change it, we can always create new issues.
It's kind of like once you have it, then it's more obvious that you need to maintain it versus when you didn't have anything, we needed an issue for it. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. And Jory's comment says that they, you know, identified a few issues that they created to be created for follow-up.
Yeah,
so
and we do.
It seems like this is.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say we do have those other issues tracking some of those blockers for completing the application. So I think I retract my objection. I think we can.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we'll drag that one over.
Yeah.
No, it didn't close.
Sorry, maybe it's because I was starting to write the comment to close it, but.
Oh no, we'll go ahead because, yeah.
I'll just close it.
Okay.
Good. All right, great. The next item is add entry point for projects wanting to join on README, review project progression. This we kind of touched on earlier. Does anyone have anything more we want to discuss on this? Great. And then the last one in this list is the document and define initial process for handling reports, which we discussed, the proposal process that the PR that Manil has opened, and we'll work through the proposal process on adding it to the COC stage 1 proposal. Great. Moving over to the to-do column here, improve governance for regular members. Miles opened this 6 days ago. The comment here is we likely want to draft better governance for onboarding and offboarding regular members. How long does this PR need to be open? What GitHub orgs, teams do they need to be added to? What mailing list do they need to be added to? And I think he's particularly talking about people joining as regular members. So perhaps we want to define, make that more clear in terms of the process. Does anyone have anything to add on that or want to take up that task? I don't know if this is really a pressing need, so maybe we you know, touch on this again next week, and as we work through some of our other issues, we can find some folks to a person or two to start to move this forward.
That makes sense to me. It's like something we should do, but it's not like we have to panic. So when somebody has, we should probably leave, you know, bring it up every week until somebody has time to take it on.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern isn't the right word, but question is, I think we say for regular members that they should be a part of one of the projects. But we'll define that, clarify it in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so far, like what I've tried to do is either add into the PR, like for Tierney, I added into the PR that, we know he's part of the project of Node project. So I added that in, and for somebody else, I just asked that they add that in. Beyond that, I think we'd said we'd notify the projects. That's probably our one exposure, but we can probably do that once we get it defined and then notify all the projects, right?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, Tierney's PR has been open for several days, and there are lots of approvals. I'm going to go ahead and merge this puppy in.
Sounds good.
Boom. All right, great. Welcome, Tierney, who's in at the TC39 meetings. Great. So moving on then, the next item in the to-do column here is ask projects to start updating references to docs in the CPC repo, for example, the COCs, et cetera. Michael, you opened this. Would you like to comment or add context?
Yeah, I think last time we talked about it maybe being a little bit premature, and the next step was to get the projects that had volunteered to start going through the list, which is taking place. So I think maybe we need to give a little more time for that process to complete, and then once we're happy there, see if there's anything that needs to be tweaked before we go back and ask, like do more of a bulk ask to all the projects.
That makes sense. I wonder, Chris, Borchers and Hiller, if in going through this process, do we expect all of the projects that are already in the foundation to also dog food this process, or are we trying to identify things that are requirements that we need to double back on for existing projects? Is that something you've discussed?
I mean, my understanding was that, all of the projects would eventually go through this, and we were just doing it early to kind of work out the kinks first before we asked everybody to do it. Got it.
Okay, great. So then, maybe this item here isn't really needed if we're going to just insist on everyone going through this checklist once it's finalized.
Yeah, I would assume that it would be covered by that work.
I mean, this is pretty much this is the reminder for us to say, okay, at some point we have to go and ask everybody to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can leave it open for now, and as we get there, we can convert it to whatever we decide at that point.
Yeah, we could rename it to, take all projects through the whatever we've called that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either way is fine. I think once we figure out what the process is, and then we know how we're going to take the projects through there, we'll work through it. So we can leave it as is for now and touch on it as we have our weekly meetings. So great. Moving on then, review foundation infrastructure and rethink how we manage it. We talked about this briefly last week with Miles when he was on the call, and I think. As he said last week, we continue to be, this is maybe premature as we kind of work through the other issues and figure out infrastructure and how we can best manage it and share it and make good use of it all. We'll get to that down the road, I assume.
Who's most involved, or is it Jory who was most involved, I think, in the infrastructure side of things for the JS Foundation?
I mean, I was helping with their stuff.
Okay.
ED, but
I'm just, that's Chris talking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I wonder if we should start to capture what we think will be relevant in terms of foundation infrastructure and how we might, be using it in the new foundation and who surface it for people to start to express interest, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one where it's just it's almost, we need to possibly fork off a group of people who will think about that one, because it's kind of, I think, a bit big to try and handle in one of these meetings.
Yeah, I almost wonder.
I'll also point out that the project onboarding process also asks for a listing of all infrastructure needs. So as projects go through that process, we would know what they're currently using or even anticipate needing. So I think as part of that process, we're going to get that inventory.
Okay. I wonder if this should be changed to like capture foundation infrastructure from the Node side and the JS side, and at least have a place where it's all surfaced, because some people might have needs but not realize, oh well, there's this other bit of infrastructure that would help us in this other way.
Yeah, I think captures maybe a subtask in this. I think this one was just as like, this is the right time to rethink what we're doing for infrastructure across the projects and understand how the foundation can best support and help in that area.
Which I guess is part of the work that Chris is talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a bigger piece. We need to have people with cycles. And, maybe your original comment was, we're still working through some of the bootstrapping stuff. Once we're through that, then it's the right time to kick that off.
All right, yeah, so we'll figure it out as we go. We'll keep this the way it is and touch on it in our weekly meetings. We only have a couple minutes left, and one of the last two items is project-directed funding. I know we kind of briefly perhaps discussed this last week. I can't remember where exactly we landed. Maybe Brian Warner remembers?
Yeah. So where we landed on this is a very complicated topic, and it's something which is being actively discussed at the board level. There's probably not much that they just at CPC level just yet, because it is there's some hefty policy considerations that come along with this. So I mean, for now, I suggest tabling it. It's probably the most effective use of it, and then it'll be revisited soon enough.
I think what would be useful is a comment that says something like, hey, this, like what you said, this being looked at by the board, and we should revisit this in like whenever you think the board may have something. Is it September, October, whenever? Just so that if somebody looks at this, says, okay, I understand the next step. It's on, basically we're waiting for whatever the board's working on, and we think that it'll be ready around this time frame.
Yeah, I mean, I can post an update in the on that.
Yeah, if you posted that,
I would be hesitant. Where I'm hesitating putting a time frame on it, because I honestly don't know how long it's going to take to work through that. It kind of depends a little bit on some other people.
I mean, are you hesitant in terms of guessing in weeks, months?
Yeah.
I know guessing is hard. But
yes, too.
Like
I just honestly don't know, other than the fact that it's in progress. And I don't know that I have quite enough visibility.
Okay. I just, then maybe leave that out. I just thought it would be like, if it's like, we should think about it again in a month because that's our current expectation, or we shouldn't worry about it for 3 months or whatever, right? But if we don't know, then we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd rather not set a false expectation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess if you have some sort of comment to that issue, that would be helpful. I even wonder if we should have like a label for things that are sitting with the board, and we'll wait until we hear from them, or if we should have another column that is like kind of waiting on the board.
I think that does make a lot of sense, Joe, because there are things like this which, like the other things I was discussing earlier in the appropriate to give an update until things kind of get settled. So, but at the same time, it's important to know the work is ongoing and that's.
Okay. I don't know if it's Brian that's cutting out or if it's me, but I think I got what you're saying. Do we think we should have a label or a column or both?
I like a column.
Okay. Waiting on the board or board/foundation?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. I've created that. Drag it to before the to-do, and I will add that issue over there, and I'll try to take a moment to go back through there. All right, and I realize too we're at 3:01, so the last thing really quickly is add admin policy docs that we should touch back on next week, and I think call it a day. Does anybody have anything else to add or close with? If not, I appreciate everyone's time and thanks for all the work you're all doing. And I look forward to talking with you more next week. Cheerio.
Talk to everybody later.
Bye.
Bye.